In 1963, Henry Ford II tried to buy Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari shook his hand, took his money, and then walked away. So Ford went home and built something from scratch. What he built won Le Mans 4 times in a row, changed the car world forever, and then just disappeared. This is the story of the Ford GT40. To understand this story, you need to understand what Le Mans meant in 1963. The 24 Hours of Le Mans was the biggest and hardest race in the world. Cars drove for a full 24 hours straight. Through the day, through the night, through rain and darkness. Most cars never made it to the finish. If you won Le Mans, you sold cars. It was that simple. Ferrari knew this better than anyone. By the early 1960s, Ferrari had won 6 out of the last 7 Le Mans races. They were the best in the world, and they knew it. Ford at the time was selling everyday family cars to regular Americans. Henry Ford II wanted to change that. He wanted Ford to be a serious performance brand. So his team reached out to Ferrari with a big offer: buy the whole company. The deal looked done. Papers were ready. Then Enzo Ferrari read the small print. Ford would take control of Ferrari's racing program. Ferrari read that, put the papers down, and walked out the door. He also said some very rude things on his way out. Ford was furious. He gathered his team and told them exactly what they were going to do. They were going to go to Le Mans, and they were going to beat Ferrari. And they were going to keep beating them until the message was clear. Ford threw a lot of money at the problem. The goal was simple: beat Ferrari at Le Mans. Have it ready in 12 months. The problem was, Ford had never built a serious endurance race car before. Winning Le Mans was not about being fast for 1 lap. You needed a car that could run hard for 24 hours without breaking down. Ferrari had been doing this for 15 years. Ford was starting from zero. Ford partnered with a small British company called Lola Cars and built around their existing racing car. They fitted it with a Ford V8 engine and called it the GT40. The 40 came from its height. The car stood exactly 40 inches tall. That is about the same height as a large dog standing up. One of the main test drivers, Ken Miles, was 6 feet tall. He could not even fit inside without them changing the roof. That tells you how extreme this car was. Ford took the GT40 to Le Mans in 1964. All 3 of their cars broke down before the finish. One stopped after less than 2 hours. Ferrari won again. Ford came back in 1965 with better cars. Ferrari still won. By this point, Ford had spent around $10 million and had 0 victories to show for it. This is when Carroll Shelby became a big part of the story. Shelby had won Le Mans himself in 1959. He knew endurance racing from the inside. He looked at the GT40 and was honest about the problems. The car needed serious work. Shelby brought in Ken Miles as the lead development driver. Miles was calm, precise, and incredibly detailed. Most drivers could tell you if a car felt fast or slow. Miles could tell you exactly what part of the car was doing it. After running 100 laps in the dark, he was not the fastest driver Ford could have hired. He was something better. He was the driver who could help build a fast car. Miles tested and tested. He pushed the car until it broke, came back with a clear explanation of what went wrong, and then they fixed it. They did this hundreds of times. Slowly, the car got better. By early 1966, it finally felt ready. Le Mans, 1966. Ford arrived with 8 cars. Ferrari brought their usual confidence. By the final hours, Ford was not just keeping up with Ferrari. Ford was pulling away. At the end of the race, Ford had cars in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. The first time in history, one company had swept all 3 top spots at Le Mans. But then Ford management made a decision people still argue about today. Ken Miles was leading, but was told to slow down so all 3 Ford cars could cross the line together for a photo. Good for the cameras. Good for marketing. Miles did what he was told. The problem was the rule book. Finishing position was decided by total distance covered. One of the other cars had started from slightly further back on the track, so when all 3 crossed the line together, that car had technically traveled a tiny bit more distance. Ken Miles, the man who had done more than anyone to make this car a winner, finished second because of a small detail in the rules. He said kind things to the press. Everyone who knew him understood how he really felt. 6 weeks later, Ken Miles was testing a new Ford racing car in California. Something went wrong. The car crashed at high speed. Ken Miles was killed. He was 47 years old. The man who built the GT40 into a winning car never got his Le Mans victory. That is not drama. That is just what happened. Ford came back in 1967 with a brand new car built entirely in America. Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt drove it to victory. The first time an American driver in an American-built car had ever won Le Mans outright. Then the rules changed. Big engines were banned. Ford's factory program was over. But the older GT40 came back in private hands, painted in the now famous light blue and orange Gulf oil colors. That car won Le Mans in 1968 and again in 1969. 4 wins in a row. 1966, 1967, 1968, 1969. Then it was gone. Ford only ever built around 107 GT40s in total. Every one that still exists today is worth over $1 million. Some have sold for much more. One sold for around $11 million at auction in 2012. Ford brought the story back in 2005 with a new road car called the Ford GT. It sold out before most people knew it existed. Then, in 2016, Ford returned to Le Mans with another new GT and won its class, 50 years after the original 1966 victory. What this whole story teaches us is simple. Ford had never done this before. They failed badly in 1964 and 1965. A lot of companies would have quit. Ford kept going, found the right people, and figured it out. The man most responsible for making it work never got the credit he deserved. He was asked to slow down for a photograph at the most important moment of his career, and 6 weeks later, he was gone. Enzo Ferrari never admitted that Ford had beaten him, but Ferrari did not win Le Mans again until 1981. 14 years later, the Ford GT40 was 40 inches tall, powered by a truck engine, built in under 2 years by a company that had never done anything like it before. And it won the hardest race in the world 4 times in a row. Enzo Ferrari once called Henry Ford II a little boy. Ford spent $10 million proving him wrong. There are worse reasons to build a great car. Drop a comment if you have seen one of these in person. And subscribe if you want more stories like this one.